Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and due to a Netflix early screening of The Witcher Season 3, Episode 6, I was able to watch it a little bit earlier than its release date on this Thursday, and I had an extra code for this event, and I literally could not give it away. I tried to give it to all the members of the Geeks and Gamers, I tried to give it to Mustang, I tried to get it to the Renaissance Nerd, and several other people, but I literally could not give this special early screening code away to another person. And after watching the episode, I cannot blame anyone for rejecting the code from me, because it was just as bad as the rest of Season 3 that we got in Volume 1. It was completely atrocious. As heralded as the most action-packed event of the season, it very much was not. It was supposed to be an action-packed episode that was going to blow people away with its spectacle. It was incredibly pathetic from a writing standpoint to an action standpoint. The coup at Thanon, for which this episode is supposed to adapt in the books, is supposed to be a gritty affair, a heart-wrenching affair, and a very suspenseful one because it's a lot of different sides. There are a lot of different people competing. There's the Redanian side that's working with some sorcerers and sorceresses. There's the Scoia'tael, which are working for Nilfgaard. There's the Nilfgaardian sorcerer allies with Vilgefortz that are also there, as well as Ciri, Geralt, and Yennefer, who are trying to do their own thing. And the Scoia'tael just rampage through it, killing people room to room, and it's just pure chaos. Chaos is the way that I would describe the coup, at least the latter half of the coup, in Time of Contempt, the book that it's supposedly adapted from. In the show, they just casually walk into the Great Hall of Garstang Palace and just kind of stand across from each other, and it's like, we're preparing to fight. Let's line up perfectly, similar to Captain America's Civil War style. And that one, it at least made sense because they didn't want to fight each other. They tried to talk first. But this one, they're all set on killing each other, but they're going to line up, they're going to have their hero shots, and they're going to have terrible dialogue, and then sort of fight when these are sorcerers fighting a bunch of elves. Without the element of surprise, the Scoia'tael don't hold much of a shot against these unified sorcerers, but for some reason they have Dimertrillian arrows that pierce through most of the spells of the sorcerers and sorceresses. I've never seen that before, and the sorcerers, they seem to only realize that they have one or two spells. They've got shield and they've got force push. These sorcerers have an unlimited amount of spell potential, and 99% of the spells they use are push and shield. Come up with something interesting, Netflix. Come up with something that's more engaging. Come up with a fight scene that isn't pathetic. Even from a choreography standpoint, when it does get to hand, there's nothing interesting in this entire episode. But I want to go back to the beginning a little bit before I dive into the coup in much more detail. Overall, I want to highlight that the dialogue is just as weak as the rest of the season. If you're hoping for action, if you only watch The Witcher for action and has been disappointed by Volume 1 at this point, you will still be disappointed because Volume 2, the episode that's supposedly supposed to have the most action of the season thus far, doesn't deliver in the action standpoint whatsoever, so I imagine you will be disappointed as well. But that's enough of my initial thoughts. From here on out, there will be spoilers, so spoiler ahead. Now, the episode starts out with some weird sunlight scenes with Yennefer and Ciri both getting the sun in their eyes, and they're like, oh my god, the other one's in trouble, even though there's no spell. There's not necessarily a psychic connection. They don't explain it in the books. It's done much better, but they act like it's somehow through the sunlight. It's awkward, and then the sunlight also goes through the shed that Radovid and Jaskier just had sex in, and they look like they're going to betray each other. Radovid goes to try to kidnap Ciri, and Jaskier is really disappointed, sad that his gay lover tried to betray him. Oh, it's so sad. We get back to the palace, and Yennefer's managed to escape. All the other sorcerers who are working for Nilfgaard have captured the other sorcerers who either aren't working for Nilfgaard or Redania, as well as the ones who are working for Nilfgaard with Vilgefortz. But some reason, Yennefer goes into the depths of the palace to escape, and there is Lydia waiting for her. We don't really know why Lydia's there in this random spot, and happens to see Yennefer, who's got Geralt's sword for some stupid reason. In the books, she does not have Geralt's sword throughout of this. In fact, Geralt and Yennefer never see each other again from when Geralt wakes up in the middle of the night, as most of this episode should have taken place during, and he leaves to go investigate the sounds of the coup. That is the last time they see each other for several books. It's going to be a long time before Yennefer and Geralt see each other, but she's got Geralt's sword to give back to him later at an opportune fight. There's a fight, and Yennefer looks like she's about to use fire magic. Her hand lights up with fire. It looks like she's going to use fire magic against Lydia, which, as we know, is a problem in this show. For some reason, fire magic is really, really evil, though they don't go to enough of a reason to justify it and contradicts the books. And later on in the episode, someone does use fire magic and they act like it's a really big deal. Oh my god, so scary. But Yennefer was just going to casually do it in the fight against Lydia. Then for some reason, Lydia is so powered up that Yennefer just gets her ass handed to her. She's about to die, and Triss comes in to save the day and helps her kill Lydia with some vines. That is all over the place, because at this point in the books, Triss is working with the Redanian intelligence, with Dijkstra, with Philippa, to root out the traitors that have aligned themselves with Nilfgaard. But for some reason, she's not aligned with anyone in this. She's helping Yennefer escape, which none of this is in the books. Throughout this whole fight sequence, Geralt is just casually walking around with Dijkstra and Philippa, who have brought all the captured sorcerers together and depowered them using Dimmerillian handcuffs. And they're just talking. Philippa's like, this is a purge. We are getting rid of the traitors. Geralt hopes it's a trial. It's not, and they have some really bad dialogue, revealing who the big villain is. And Tissaia realizes that they're going to try to kill her boyfriend, who's not her boyfriend in the books. Tissaia and Vilgefortz are not a couple, at least that we know of, in the books. And in this conversation, we find out that portals are sometimes okay. They mention that on this island in Garstang Palace, that people have been teleporting out all the time. That Vilgefortz has been teleporting out, and for some reason, the Redanian intelligence has record of portals. So portals are okay here, and later on we actually see portals being used, but they're always the evil portals of Vilgefortz. But for those of you who don't know, and they mention it later on in the episode, because of the existence of Torlar, which is a teleportation tower at the edge of the island, it prevents teleportation and portals on the island. And apparently they kept with that only for the normal portals, and that's why they created all the evil portals, so that they could still have the contrivances of portals but not contradict the source material in that way. So apparently that's why we have all the evil portals throughout the season, is so that Vilgefortz can push Istrid away and send him through a portal later on and do a bunch of other portal related stuff. It's really weird. That's not a good enough justification for evil portals, just to make your writing easier for you, Netflix. At this point, Geralt looks out the window and sees that there's fog rolling into the island, which shouldn't be the case. At this point in the books, the Scoia'tael have already snuck into the palace and are hiding in the wine cellars beneath the palace. And Francesca, who isn't a villain at this point, at least we don't know she's a villain until this moment, when she's released by Tissaia, Francesca goes and gets them, and the Scoia'tael start rampaging throughout the palace. In this one, apparently there's going to be a Redanian army coming, as well as the Nilfgaardian troops with the Scoia'tael, who are dressed in Nilfgaardian armor. Specifically, Francesca is wearing Nilfgaardian armor. It looks terrible. The Scoia'tael in general look terrible, but for some reason, they're being clouded by fog as they're rolling in ships to the island. Instead of already being there, they're sailing in on ships covered by fog, which doesn't make any sense. If this had taken place at night, you could have even had them sail under the cover of darkness without the fog, or they could have already been there. But the fog, it's so blatantly magically created that you don't need Geralt to say that it's weird. Everybody who looks at it is like, yeah, that's not natural. There's definitely something hiding in there. It's so incredibly stupid. This is an example of a change from the books that is just so asinine that I can't believe they did it. Moving on a little bit, Tissaia frees all the captured sorcerers and sorceresses, which leads to Vilgefortz going down to the Great Hall where the dance took place in the last episode, and freeing the Scoia'tael and letting them into the palace through some weird wall change secret passage thing. And during this, he has one of the most terrible villain reveal speeches ever. He's just casually like, Tissaia, I never loved you, you're pathetic, you're really sad, why are you here? And just blatantly turning Tissaia so against him. It's so unnecessary and written like a toddler who doesn't understand why people don't like each other and what love is. It's horrendously written on a myriad of levels. Now, something very important happens here. In the books, Filavandrel is primarily only in the short story, which we saw in season 1 with him, where he was introduced, and then later on he goes and visits Francesca in Doblathana after she becomes the queen of there. He shouldn't be here at all, and he is one of the last high kings. He is supposed to be a little bit above the normal elf. He's supposed to be something important, something that Geralt respects very, very deeply for what he is. But he's in this scene just to kill him off. Tissaia sends some sort of bolt at Francesca, which is going to kill him. He jumps in the way, and he just explodes, splatters the boys style, just his blood all over Francesca in one of the most violent displays we've seen in this show thus far. They do not treat Filavandrel like this. That is wrong to treat a character like him with such a casual end. And yes, Francesca's upset about it, but it's very, very disappointing to see Philavandrel die like this. Going back to Yennefer, she makes her way out of the palace, out what looks like over 20 miles. She is very, very far from the palace at this point, and she meets up with Ciri in the middle of nowhere on this massive island, and they just happen to find each other. Magic might have done it, I'll forgive that, but they find each other so far from the palace, and Rience also finds them at this random spot on the island. Instead of fighting Rience in an epic wizard's duel, Yennefer's just like, "Aw, Ciri, he's been badgering you. You take this one. You take this fight." So she just casually stands there as Ciri charges Rience with the sword. Yes, Ciri should be quite competent with the sword at this point. Not amazing, but even still, she's a child going up against a sorcerer, which she has a little bit of magical training, but nowhere near enough to fight any sorcerer. She's barely a novice when it comes to her magical uses. She should not have a chance in hell in a fight against Rience. But Yennefer is just like, "You go, girl!" And Ciri immediately cuts off Rience's hands, and then he starts to look like he's winning. Yennefer's like, "All right, I'm gonna take out Geralt's sword, I'm gonna surrender," and then she throws it expertly past Rience to Geralt, who somehow snuck up behind a sorcerer and immediately cuts off his head. That is the big climactic action fight sequence to end Rience's story in the TV show. Rience doesn't die at this point in the books, but apparently Geralt sneaks up on him and cuts off his head, and it's really pathetic. They wanted this show to be action-packed. That's what a lot of people loved about Season 1. Even people who didn't think the scripts for Season 1 were that good, they said, "Hey, the action is still great. I still love the action and the fight sequences." I agree with that. In the first episode, Geralt's fight with Renfri's henchman and later on with Renfri is incredibly well choreographed. That quality is no longer present in Season 3 at all, because any fight scene that lasts longer than 2 seconds is choreographed like someone who's never picked up a sword before. There is no good choreography in this episode whatsoever. At this point, Yennefer realizes that she has to go help her friends, which is what it is in the books, but Ciri realizes this as well and says, "No, you have to go. Oh, you love Tissaia. You can't let your friend die." And it's this like 3-minute speech from Ciri about how she needs to go, and Geralt's like, "No, we've only just found each other." Some really terrible dialogue, a way stretched out sequence. Yennefer could have just been like, "I can't leave them. You guys are safe. You guys get out of here. I'm gonna go back and help." That's 2 seconds, not 3 minutes of this. And Yennefer decides, all right, I'm going to jog back the 20 miles I just ran back to the palace. It's insane how far away she is, which is important for later. Then we cut back to the fight scene that's happening in the Great Hall, which is the culmination of the coup. It's just this one room where everyone's lining up and fighting each other. And these two soldiers from Nilfgaard, they attach their hilts together. And I mean that literally. Their swords, one of them puts a sword up like this, the other one smashes down like this, and it becomes a double-sided sword like Darth Maul. But not just one of them takes it. If he just passed it off to one dude and he was wielding a double-sided sword, alright, fine. But they both stay holding their own hilts. So these two dudes are holding a connected sword trying to fight someone like that. It's insane and so impractical. What were they thinking with that prop? They probably thought it was epic, and it would have been decently epic if it was just one dude connecting these swords and wielding them. But two dudes wielding a two-bladed sword is insane, utterly pointless and impractical to such a degree that is laughable and farcical. At this point, Tissaia has enough of the bloodshed. She is pissed off after her lover, Vilgefortz, betrayed her and led to this utter slaughter. So she's going up to higher in the castle tower above the Great Hall where she's looking down on everyone down there, and she's enacting what's called Alzur's Lightning, which isn't anything that is from the books. There's no spell like that that I'm at least aware of, and Alzur is a name from the lore and history of The Witcher, but he's one of the 3 initial sorcerers who helped create the Witchers. He's an important figure in the mutation sphere. Why does he have a lightning spell named after him? And for some reason, this spell channels lightning through Tor Lara, then through Tissaia, and then she's able to zap everyone down in the Great Hall, killing a bunch of them, regardless of their side. And then later on, they're like, oh, it'll kill anyone she lays her eyes on, trying to explain away why she's actively trying to kill even her own allies. But that doesn't work because we see her own allies frantically diving for cover, putting up shields, in a lot of trouble here. So she's just casually killing everyone, even though they try to explain it away. Tissaia went full evil mode. She went full I'm killing everyone mode. And this lasts for a while. This lightning that she does lasts for quite a long time. And then it suddenly ends. And the people downstairs who have survived get back up together, line up one more time, and get ready for another fight. But when Yennefer goes up to Tissaia at this point, a little bit later on, she's still channeling the lightning. And it's still going away from her. It's still leaving her body. But it's not hurting anyone downstairs. So the spell doesn't end till there. That's really, really odd. Now, important thing to note here was when the Scoia'tael arrived, Cahir arrived with them, which is accurate to the books. Cahir is here at this point in the books. It should be the only part of the season that he's a part of. It's the only part of books he appears in, and he goes off to chase Ciri. But more importantly, right before that, he meets up with Fringilla, who is for some reason fighting with the Scoia'tael. Now, I may have missed something, so if I did miss it in volume 1 of season 3, please absolutely correct me. But last time I remember seeing Fringilla, she was drunk in a tavern. She wasn't teaming up with Francesca. She wasn't teaming up with the Nilfgaardians. How did she know this was taking place? And how did she incorporate herself into the Scoia'tael attack? How did any of that happen? And even still, Cahir doesn't know that Fringilla is alive. They end up next to each other during the fight, during the lightning. And he's like, oh my God, Fringilla, you're alive. And she's like, yeah, it's crazy what you can do when you can think for yourself, even though she's doing what Ymir wants. She's helping Ymir, but she's telling Cahir, don't help Ymir, but I'm doing it anyway. It's insane. Why is Fringilla here? There's no reason she should be here. It's not that the Nilfgaardians recruited her, because Cahir, the leader of the Nilfgaardian band there, doesn't know she's there, and it doesn't look like Francesca knows anymore. So Fringilla, we went from seeing her drunk in a tavern, suddenly appears with everybody, and is all gung-ho to help, but casually makes remarks about, you shouldn't help Ymir. It's insane and illogical, and I can't piece together the pieces. It's illogical to the 9th degree, but Cahir gets away from the fight, he starts chasing Ciri, and he randomly, on this big-ass island, after tons of miles, because they're far away from the palace still, remember how far Yennefer had to run, he catches up to Geralt and Ciri. How does he know where they are? How does he get that far that fast? Faster than they got that far? And Cahir fights Ciri for a little bit, but he's like, no, I will not fight you. Here, kill me. And he tries to put Ciri's sword in his neck and say, I'd be glad if yours the last face I saw. It's so weird. But suddenly some Scoia'tael show up and he's like, oh my God, I will defend you. And he goes to fight the people that he invaded the palace with. It is such a quick turn. That's something that happens a lot in this episode, is allegiances change on a dime for virtually no reason whatsoever. And it's pure chaos. Chaos. From a character standpoint, from a motivation standpoint. There's that sequence. Then back at the Great Hall, where the fight is taking place, Yennefer arrives and is able to save some of their lives as Francesca's going gun-ho. She wants to kill Tissaia for killing Filavandrel. She made it that far, and Cahir made it all the way out there in the span of 5 minutes? And they show consistently they're not skipping time during this fight. The fight is happening in consistent order. Unless Tissaia is sending lightning to the Great Hall for several hours and everyone's just hunkered down waiting for the lightning to end. Unless that happens, no. Yennefer was able to run really far and Cahir was able to run really far. Incredible distances. And they never ever explain it. And if you're in the chat, it's like, oh, but there's magic, there's teleportation. Nuh-uh. In just a minute here, Philippa says they can't portal out of here. She has to help Dijkstra walk out of the palace and get far enough away that they can create a portal, which is how it was in the books. So evil portals, okay, but their portal's still not okay, so they have to get far enough away. And so how did Yennefer get so far twice, all the way away from the palace to meet with Ciri, then all the way back to help the sorcerers and sorceresses in the final push of the coup? And how is Cahir able to do the exact same thing? The time and distance of this episode make no more sense than it has the entire show thus far. Now, this is the point that I mentioned earlier in the episode where someone uses fire magic. Stregobor, who has been imprisoned because of his racist intentions to experiment on elven girls that we discovered in the last episode, he somehow escaped from whatever prison he was in, and he's just, oh my God, I'm gonna kill some elves. He's not concerned about the sorcerers and sorceresses who locked him up. He's using fire magic, and he's gonna kill all the Scoia'tael because he hates elves. And he lets them escape. He's building a fire magic, and everyone's screaming, oh my God, he's wielding fire magic. And the sorcerers and sorceresses are able to escape, but the elves don't do anything. They don't go anywhere. They just hang out and wait for Stregobor to blow them up when Tissaia and Yennefer are strategically looking down at them at the high level so we can see what happened. It's ridiculous. Why is he here? How is he here? And we saw Yennefer use fire magic earlier on in this episode, or what appeared to be. Please correct me if I'm wrong if I missaw that. But in previous seasons, we've seen Yennefer use fire magic. It's not a thing in the books. Fire magic being evil is not something from the books. Yes, fire magic is incredibly difficult and hard to use, and Ciri is too much of a novice, like I mentioned in the fight with Ryan's, to wield it, which we'll see in the next episode or the episode after that of this season. But a more experienced sorcerer like Stregobor or sorceress like Yennefer should be able to wield it no problem. But, oh my God, Stregobor's gotten fire, and he ends the coup. He kills all the elves, and that's the coup at Thanon. A great hall fight where people line up and push shield over and over again with magic arrows that pierce through the shield, and choreography out of a high school play. That's the coup at the end, the big climactic event, this epic adventure, this episode, which is going to be the set piece of the season. That's what we get. That's all we get. At this point, Geralt and Ciri, with Cahir fighting behind them, covering their escape, make it to a boat on the shoreline of the island, and they're going to try to row it away. But suddenly, Geralt senses that Vilgefortz is here. And he's like, "Run, Ciri." Instead of getting Ciri in the boat and at least casting her off, saying get away from the island, which would have been the smart thing to do, he says, just run. Doesn't tell her where to go, doesn't say, hey, Tor Lara is a good idea or anything like that. And then when he walks in to see Vilgefortz like, you know where she's going, right? Tor Lara. It's like, no, if you put her in a boat like an intelligent person, she'd be off the island. And that's something that we see throughout this entire episode, is back when Cahir fought Ciri, Geralt stood there and did nothing. He did the exact same thing Yennefer did in the fight with Ryan's, where he's just like, oh, you go, girl. Oh, this guy's been chasing you for a long time. You have fun. This is your moment. And he literally just stands there and does not raise a weapon. And you might think, oh, Cahir had no intentions of hurting her. How does Geralt know that? There is no reasonable explanation to explain why Geralt knows that Cahir will not hurt Ciri in this instance. It's moronic. Geralt acts like a complete moron throughout the entire run of this episode. And when he's talking to Vilgefortz, the dialogue is so atrocious. They're both just generic, you will join me, I will never join you. Really pathetic stuff that doesn't fit, and they keep fighting and talking at the same time, and it's so drawn out that Rachel, who was watching it with me, was saying, just fight already. The dialogue was dragging out so much that we were bored. It felt like the longest hour of my life, and this big climactic fight, which is supposed to end the episode, that is supposed to bring things home and show Geralt at his weakest, is so boring and uninteresting, even from a choreography standpoint, that we were struggling to even pay attention. And of course, just like in the books, Vilgefortz kicks Geralt's ass, completely annihilates him, breaks his back, breaks his leg, and leaves him on the shore of the island, which is not where he left him in the books. In the books, it was in the entryway to Tor Lara, I believe, and Tissaia and Triss found him and helped get him off the island, got him far in a way that Triss could teleport him to Brokilon to be healed. But he just is left on the shore, and for some reason, in just a moment here, the tide's gonna come up so fast that he's dragged out into the water, where he's floating. That's not how tides work. They can't come in that fast. Just like we saw with everyone suddenly appearing 20 miles away, then back and forth with the palace. The time isn't consistent, because we saw in the tower things are happening 1 second to 1 second to 1 second, and then we come back to Geralt right away, who's floating out in the sea. It's insane. But Vilgefortz makes it to the tower and up to where Ciri is at the top of the tower, which isn't something that happens in the books, and she's activating the monolith that's in the tower. Again, they're pushing this monolith crap. There's not a monolith inside of Tor Lara. It's Tor Lara itself that is magical. It's not just encasing a magical stone. And Ciri is entranced by it. Vilgefortz like, you cannot control the power, you are not ready. We shall rule the continent together. And some really terrible dialogue. Then there's a flash of light. Ciri vanishes. The tower explodes. Vilgefortz looks like he's gonna die. He's not dead, but it looks like he is. And the tower collapses, revealing the monolith standing on its own. Screw the monolith. Screw the book that Vilgefortz got earlier in the episode, which is from Blood Origin. And it's just a mess. This is not how things played out in the books. There's a few general plot points, very, very general, that are from the book, so it's slightly more accurate from a, this happened. Bullet point wise, it's relatively accurate, but the content of each scene is so drastically changed and bastardized that it barely holds resemblance to the source material. At most, I'd give this a 5% accurate mark, which I think is pushing it, because you can't just say, oh, Yennefer ends up outside the palace with Ciri, when how that happened, why it happened, where they were, what they did is all different. That's not enough to justify it being an accurate story. I was really hoping that this one would improve in quality over the predecessors in Volume 1, because it was so action heavy. But even the action was sad. There was still a lot of pointless dialogue, pointless bloat. This episode could have been substantially shorter, and so much better if they kept with the source material. Just like with Volume 1, I'm giving this episode a 1 out of 10. Now, I will be watching the rest of the season when it comes out on Thursday with a panel of YouTubers similar to how I did Volume 1, and I will have a review out for all 3 episodes, the entire volume, on Friday. But at least for this point, that's what we have of Volume 2. That is what I've seen of Volume 2. and I am blown away by how incredibly terrible the show consistently is. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff that's dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.